So the structure of today's session is that Ruth will present to us, and we will also have questions in the chat which you can put during the presentation. As Carmen mentioned, it's being recorded, and we will send out information and a feedback form after the presentation, after the webinar. So if you think other people you know may find this useful, then you can also forward them the recording of the link once you get it. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, who's Ruth Ann LAKE. Ruth Ann has over 30 years experience leading management development workshops on topics such as leadership and change management, cross-cultural teams, leading virtual teams, etc., etc. And her focus on change management has led to a more in-depth understanding of effective stress management and of building resilience. She's nicely given us a list of resources, which, as I said, we'll send out after the presentation. But you can also find more info on her website, which is www.ruthannlake.com, and that's Ruth, A-N-N, Lake.com. And with that, I just want to remind people that for these webinars, please remember to register for them on the PWN site. That way you'll get a reminder an hour before the webinar. And I will manage the questions during the presentation. The other thing I should mention, because you may not have experienced this before, is Ruth Ann has got some polls, and she's also got some breakout rooms in her presentation, in her flow. So that's also something new that we're doing for this particular webinar. With that, thank you, and I'll hand over to Ruth Ann.
Okay, thanks to everybody, and I guess Carmen, will I be able to share my screen now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, so I'd just like to go into the screen right here. We already asked people that some people might have joined just a little bit late. So in case you have, if you'd mute your microphone to avoid any ambient noise. And then what I'm just going to introduce in this session about resilience in the time of coronavirus is what are our feelings, what are we doing to cope with it, and some advice about resilience, and also a worksheet and a model that I'll share with you and then allow you to work on that in breakout rooms. If you're seeing on the screen a couple of little 2 or 3 videos on the right, and that's kind of not allowing you to see the whole screen, you can just click to reduce that icon and you'll mainly be looking at the slide. So we're living really, as you've seen in all the news bulletins, in an unprecedented time. Most of us are on lockdown. Our lives are upended. Many of us feel a bit afraid, as you can see in the cartoon there on the right. There are fears to our health and our livelihoods. Dramatic lifestyle changes. I don't think I've ever spent so much time at home in my life as in the last couple of months. And many of us are blocked, far away from friends and loved ones. There's often a feeling of loneliness or solitude, and I know some people who are a bit afraid of even leaving the house. And they might tell you more about it if you end up in their breakout room. So I'd like to get started here right at the beginning and ask you to think about what are your chief concerns. We're going to do 2 polls, and this is the first one. And then when I launch the polls, you're going to be asked to think about what are some of your chief concerns. You can vote for the top 2. So this list is not exhaustive. There are many more, but having talked to a lot of people, I see these are very common. So for example, you're afraid about getting sick or even being contagious to other people. There's a fear of losing your livelihood, your work, your income, loneliness, solitude, being far away from loved ones and family members. Being confined, not able to travel. Some people came on early and we were asking, when will the borders be open? Because many of us are used to traveling quite a bit for our jobs and to see people we care for. Maybe becoming a bit unbalanced. I know people who are having problems with overeating, drinking, their sleep pattern is disturbed. Some other people I spoke with are in conflict with those with whom they're confined, their partner, their children. I spoke with one friend in Italy who's with her mother-in-law in the same house, and there's a few little conflicts there. It might not be on this list, it might be other. So what we're going to do now is to launch a poll. You're going to be asked to choose the top 2, and if it's not there, you can click other and write what your other thing is in the chat box. Okay, now you're viewing the questions and just click on your top 2 concerns. Feel free to write, it's not on the list, I'm going to write other and then write what it is. Okay, so we're seeing the numbers coming in there. About 30% have voted already. Okay, I'm getting close to half of the people voting. Okay. I would just say let's close it down in the next few seconds. Okay. Okay, so now we're looking at the results. Okay. And if you can see it on the screen, it's obvious to everybody. I don't know if Carmen would like to help in the interpretation here. The first one is the one that was most voted. I did this the other day in another group with a client in Italy, and it was also the first one that was voted, was number 1, afraid of getting sick or being contagious to other people. So that's still a deep fear. And somebody I spoke with 2 days ago in Milan said they were now able to go out and go around in the streets, but there were very few people circulating, and this is maybe why. And this is going to be here in France. We're going to the déconfinement next Monday. We might see something similar.
Ruth Ann, we're not seeing the results on our screen. Oh, there you go.
Sorry.
Oh, Carmen was supposed to be managing it. Sorry. Okay, Carmen. Okay, now it's visible. Okay. So the top one was the most voted. Thank you for speaking up there. 67% afraid to get sick or be contagious. Only 8% of those responding were afraid of losing their work, their income. Wow, I didn't vote, but I would be in that category. Loneliness is 25%, solitude, and being confined, not being able to go far from home. That's the second most voted one. That's 42%. Nobody's drinking or eating too much. Wow, you guys are great. In conflict with the people with whom you're confined. Some people are voting for that. 1 person out of the 12 who voted. And other. Carmen, are you able to share what's in the chat box under the other?
There is Gabriela couldn't vote. Is afraid of getting sick and be contagious of other people and being confined.
Okay.
And another is from Lala, remembering H1N1 when I stay at hospital.
Okay, so that's, we can stop sharing those results there, Carmen. And I'm gonna, then we'll take that off the screen. And I'm just gonna ask then, okay. It stopped then, okay. And then what I'd like to do is just to point out the fact that we have a second.
One more others, if you would like to know.
Sorry, I thought is there other things in the chat box? Yes, what are they?
I just received it, sorry. It's
okay,
not having complete information to make important decisions.
Okay, so we're having to make decisions in the lack of information. Okay. Anything else, or we go ahead with the next poll?
You can continue, thanks.
Okay, now there's another poll that we have a lot of concerns, and we're going to come back to these in a minute. So keep track of the one that was your concern. And we have poll number 2, which deals with what are you doing to cope with having these concerns? The ambiguity, the fear of getting sick, the loss of work, etc. So poll number 2, if you can launch that, Carmen, that's about the way that you're coping with the situation. Most of you, about half of you, are doing to cope with the situation are engaging in exercise, walking, jogging, etc. And I'd exactly be in that number 3 there. Then I think right after that, we have putting energy into developing new opportunities, 43%. That's great. And I think being with the PWN is also can provide a lot of opportunities. 14% meditation, yoga, prayer, reflecting on your own perhaps. One friend of mine is starting to read poetry and even write it in a quiet space. Reaching out to friends for support, 29%, and that's definitely what we do in the Professional Women's Network. And what about the other? We have several people that wrote in the chat box. Can you share that, Carmen?
Yes, so the first one says working a lot, which I feel very identified. Limiting news intake, contributing to the cause by making masks and surgical gowns. That's a very good initiative. Chatting on socials, projects, nothing on this, I wear my mask. Coping strategy, limit risky places where contagious is more likely, gymnastic, yoga, and helping daughter with school, working on my autumn school, etc.
Okay, thanks. So we can stop sharing the poll now, and then if I'll go back to sharing my screen with the next slides. Okay. Okay, we've done that. So are we back to the screen sharing now? Okay, so you've just reflected on one of your chief concerns, but also some of the things that you're doing to cope. So what I'd like you to do is remember what some of your chief concerns were. When Carmen read the chat, you might have said, oh yes, that's true for me as well. The person who was talking about dealing with an incomplete information, for example, remember that. I'm going to remember the one that's in red here, worries about lost work, lost revenue, savings, losing value, etc. Maybe for you, it's loneliness. So remember one of those concerns. We'll come back to it in a little bit for an exercise, okay? So thinking about that, what I'd like to do is share a definition for resilience. Some of you may be familiar with Martin Seligman. He's an expert in positive psychology and directs a program on that, a graduate program at the University of Pennsylvania, written many books. This is just one of them. So he's defining resilience as a capacity to become healthy, strong, or successful again after something bad happens. So the ability to return to your original shape after you've been pulled, stretched, bent, uprooted. But I'm going to take that metaphor one step beyond that and talk about this ability, yes, to bounce back after something bad happens without arriving at a breaking point. But I deliberately put in this image here of palm trees because we're Nice Côte d'Azur Professional Women's Network, and we have trees like this right along the seaside. And when I was young, living in Miami, Florida, we often would have hurricanes. My grandfather was an expert on agriculture and plants, and I was very upset once when one of our palm trees lost quite a lot of its branches. And he explained to me that they're built to survive. There's a part of the palm tree that's called the bud or the heart. It's where those branches come out from. And if that survives, the tree branches will actually regenerate in anywhere from 2 months to a year, depending on the type of tree. I like the fact that it's actually called the palm heart, because I think perhaps we can regenerate and grow some new branches, metaphorically speaking, throughout this difficult period of coronavirus. So I'd like to keep that idea of the palm tree regenerating and not just turning back to the original shape, but growing something new. Resilient persons know that things don't always go as planned. Accidents can happen. It can be a little fender bender, or it can be something really bad, like an earthquake disaster. This is a photo from the earthquakes in central Italy a few years ago. But resilient people avoid feeling that they were just victims of bad luck. It always happens to me. The resilient people choose where to focus their attention. So maybe this person, this young boy, is saying, look, it's been a disaster, this earthquake, but the church tower is still standing. And the people in the town say, when we construct the town center, we can even add more parks with playgrounds, more trees, and more flowers. If any of you have been watching Andrew Cuomo's press conferences about the coronavirus, he often refers to how New York built after September 11th. They increased security, how they rebuilt after Hurricane Sandy. And this is the idea of you have to think what we can do to cope better with these situations in the future. The idea of resistance or resilience, and in French, résistance, or even in Italian, resistenza, is very associated with resilience. I originally started developing, I have a 2-day workshop in Italian, which I developed for a client in Lombardia, and they have a lot of technical and engineers in that group. So I wanted to put in this engineering metaphor, which I think is telling. So what they said in the resistance, in the engineering field of material sciences, it refers to the tension of the breaking point. So it's a mechanical property that indicates the maximum force that a material or structure can bear before reaching a breaking point. And it depends on a lot of things. For example, the quality of the materials, the methods of materials, of producing the materials, and conservation. The state of tension or load. So how many heavy trucks are going over that bridge all day long? The speed, duration, and repetition of the load. They're going over very quickly. They're going over repeatedly, multiple times per day. The traffic is very heavy. And what about the environmental conditions? Extreme heat, extreme weather, humidity. these things all contribute. And so to test these materials, they actually do these compression tests. Well, we can't really do that on human beings, but if we could, it'd be the coronavirus testing all of us, I think. So we sometimes think if we take this metaphor about resistance or the bridge to an individual psychological level, it refers to how we perceive the situation. So we perceiving this as, you know, oh my God, this COVID-19, it's insurmountable. I'm a victim of these government rules. I just watched the press conference with the national government in France, hoping that to see what the rules are. I feel very confined by having to be just 1 kilometer and no more from my apartment. Here in Nice, for those of you tuning in from outside Nice, we have a police drone which flies over people's heads and advises them to respect social distancing if they're not doing so. It's enough to make you feel slightly paranoid. The pharmacies, people have told me until now, I've had no masks, no hand sanitizer. People feel that they can't be protected. One person complained bitterly to me about a man standing too close to her and not respecting the security distance when she went to the supermarket. Some people are thinking, if I get sick, I'll be all alone. I'm living here on my own. Or one person here in Nice said, I don't speak French very well. What happens if I have to go to the hospital? So they're thinking about, they're perceiving the situation with all of these worries. What we can actually do is go towards reframing the situation. So yes, it's true. There's elements we cannot control, like what the government rule will be, but we often tend to over-focus on them. So while we can't control an external event like a tornado, an earthquake, a pandemic, or the emergency government measures that our local and national government is taking to deal with them, we do have some control over how we react to those events. And we are choosing our behaviors. So you might tend to just focus on, oh my God, the government is changing this. I don't know what's going to happen. Will I be able to travel? I can't control anything. Our tendency might be to think it's all out of my control, or 95%. It's mainly this big dark area. I'm not getting information. It's ambiguous. I have to follow these rules. They're not clear. It's terrible. And we might really tend to focus on the part that's out of my control. However, maybe a little voice inside of us then starts saying, but maybe there is something that I can do. And what can that be? So I'm referring to this as the control model. And if you think of this and reframe it, you might say, okay, I'm going to squish that dark blue out of my control part down. It is there. It is a significant part. I'm just making a hypothetical example, 25% of my situation. But there are other things, the hypothetical example here, 40% of what I can do on my own. I can start doing an exercise program. I can start making masks. So those are some things that I've been doing, for example. I can start reading more. I can start learning about new things. And with the help of others, I put another 40% over here. So the help of others, it was actually a good friend who sent me a great video about an exercise program, or with other work colleagues, we're developing web sessions together to help our clients. So I'm working together with other people personally and professionally to try to get more of a feeling of control. So what I'd like for you to do now is to come back. Remember I said to hold on to that area of concern you had. My example was the example of being worried about not being able to travel and do my normal work, which is leading management workshops. So I'm holding on to that concern. And Carmen is going to put you into small groups of 3. And inside that small group, you'll be able to see the other participants. We'll ask you to share what was your concern. This should be treated with confidentiality with the others. And what can you do on your own regarding that concern? And what can you do with the help of others to mitigate that perception of being really out of control? Try to think in terms of percentages. Yes, 30% is out of my control, but 40% is this and 20% is that, with the help of friends. That can help you kind of reason about it. Other people in your trio can add some suggestions. Remember, we'll have about 10 minutes. Please practice fair air time, share time. Nobody should dominate the conversation. And at the end of the 10 minutes, you'll be invited to join the main room in the virtual plenary room. And then one representative per group will be asked to share the main key learning that they came up with. So Carmen, can you send them into the breakout rooms then? So just put your hand up like this if you'd like to share with us.
Thoughts and that being alone, it can be challenging, and how important it is for us to stay connected. And that led to my personal discovery that it's not just staying connected, but it's with absolutely whom I'm connected with. Many of you may or may not know that my husband and I split our time between the Riviera and unfortunately the US. And for me, it's almost as if, and I'm going to say this with some trepidation, but with some, hopefully with some clarification, the connection to the Riviera is much more not important, but necessary for me. And I have brilliant connections here and respect and appreciate them ever so much. But I truly feel that my spirit, soul, whatever is there, and therefore the ability to be able to stay connected to the region and the culture of the Riviera is just key for me.
Okay, Ella, well, I hope we're allowing you to connect somewhat, although virtually, and we eagerly await your return.
Thank you.
Thank you. So anybody from the other groups at the end? I think we had 5 different breakout rooms. Anybody from one of the other rooms would like to add another comment? Let me see, don't be shy here. Okay, so Amanda, I have to unmute your mic.
I can talk for my group. Sorry, my internet went away for a little while there, and I dropped out of my room. So I hope the others don't mind. So we basically all had the same experience. At first, people were scared. We were like, oh my gosh, if we leave the house, are we going to get this thing and die? But after a little while, we just had to get on with it. And so we started doing things like people attended webinars. They learned a lot of new things. And it was good because it was an opportunity to do things differently and to have that learning and to have those different connections that we might not have otherwise had. So now people are moving on to thinking about, well, what comes after deconfinement? How are people going to behave? So there's still unknowns in there, but that's at least how my group got through this.
Okay, so looking at opportunities for learning and growing. Okay, great. Any other person would like to make a contribution? I'm not going to force people. Some people actually feel it's a little bit private. Okay, so if I don't see anybody raising their hand, I'll go on. Oh, Gabriela, you have something? Yeah.
Okay, so we had a couple of technological issues. So our chat was a little bit, let's say, troubled. But anyway, we were both sharing that what really made us a little bit difficult to accept this situation was the difficulty to get in touch with people with whom that we like, that we love, and so on, family and friends. Yeah. And so after the first time of, discomfort and so on, we decided to leverage on the technology that we have, that in this situation is quite useful. Discovering, by the way, that having more contact with these people was going to give us the energy that is giving us the energy that we need. Then other things, investing on ourselves, meaning reading, not only job-related things, but also other kind of readings to kind of have a bigger or a big picture with reference to the situation, to be, let's say, energized again. No? So not give in with the anxiety that might be related to this kind of situation.
Okay, perfect. So it's again kind of like Ella, connecting with others and using the technology we have to do so, but also learning and reading, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, that's exploring new horizons in inner ways, So some people might even share what they're reading with others. Okay, anybody else? Because then I'd just like to go I noticed it was advertised for an hour, so I wanted to go. I have just a couple more slides and then some questions and comments in the end. I think 4 more slides altogether because I wanted to try to keep on time. I know some people have dinner coming on, and see a compliment there to Gabriela. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen so we can go back to the slides here. And we just got back from the breakout room. I hope you did find that interesting to be able to speak with some other people there. And then what I'm going to do here is talk just another metaphor as we close. What helps to develop resistance and again resilience, and I'm using these mechanical metaphors because I would be doing this later with engineers, is to develop some types of shock absorbers. This is what helps your car and your motorcycle not bump so much. So the idea of getting perspective and standing back, you tend to become emotional, and the anxiety is definitely an emotional response. So you need to stand back out of that emotion, and talking with others can help you do that. But don't reach out and contact others who might be even more nervous or tense than you are. Try to seek some calm voices and surround yourself with what I call high-grade or people, so that people who will help you reflect and understand things. And to put into perspective, I think, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, what the very worst, but then think about also what are the positive opportunities. You know, I know people who've taken time to contact people they haven't been speaking to in years. And so doing deepen relationships with family members, with long lost friends. Some people I know are pondering a career shift, they're preparing for that. One person I know is studying Chinese like crazy because she wants to have a next career in China. And people are reordering their priorities. So it can be a great moment for getting those new opportunities. Some of you, I know in the other webinar I did, web session rather, I had some people from Lebanon participating, and they had been children in the Lebanese Civil War. So sometimes if you've been through a difficult childhood experience, you can be a little bit more anxious than the, say, average person when a disaster like this hits. So you need to treat yourself well and be gentle with yourself. You can leave what I call the taskmaster outside the door. So I spoke with one friend in North America who was fanatically cleaning her house every day. And I said, you know, you don't have to be so hard on yourself and get every little crumb in every little corner, because you're just not doing yourself a favor by being that way. So, and she had that parental voice in her mind pushing her to kind of have an exaggerated behavior. Also, you need to just take care of yourself. You can't pour, we say, from an empty cup. Last couple words here of advice that I would share before we take some time for questions near the end is find something that's a safe haven for you, an anchor of some sort. Where for one person I know, it was a corner of her garden where she just went to find an area of calmness near some flowers she had planted. For a man I spoke with, it was just being able to sit in his favorite comfortable chair in the living room and enjoy a few minutes of, you know, pouring himself a glass of wine before watching something on Netflix, but something that's going to give him strength and something he can relate to. Another technique with neuro-linguistic programming around anchoring is to think of some physical object that you can touch that will remind you of something that will give you strength. When I'm working with a difficult client or I have a difficult CEO in the participant group, perhaps I always wear the particular pair of earrings my sister gave me. And as I get a hostile question or a tough criticism, I just gradually touch a little bit that earring and think of my sister who loves me and cares for me, and it gives me strength to respond in a diplomatic, assertive way. Everybody can invent an anchor like this. You can need to become the architect of your own life, like the person I know who's now studying Chinese. She said, this is the opportunity I have to have this foreign experience, and I'm going to make the best of it. And she's taking that decision, so it gives her a sense of being in control. Of course, she can't control the whole world, but it's giving her that sense that she's in charge of something. A lot of us, I think, have more strength than we realize. It's been shown that men, and I think there was a couple men on the call here, but I'm not sure if they're still there. One person had to leave. That men are a bit more physically strong for the short sprint, but women are the ones that go in for the endurance. And most of the people on the call, this is Professional Women's Network, are women. So we have more endurance. They were particularly capable of that remarkable endurance. Then I just wanted to say at the end of this slide something I always said to my little girl, who's now 25, when I was reading her books by a famous British author, Gabriella referred to reading. So I used to say to my little girl when she was not sure she would be able to do something, I would say, "You're smarter than you pink," which is from Winnie the Pooh. Some of you might recognize this, obviously in the fiction category, although it might have a lot of words of wisdom for us in the non-fiction. So I just want to say in the last minutes here is that we're going to go for just a minute into questions and comments period. There were a few people who had technical difficulties getting into the breakout rooms, and I'd like to open it up to them for questions or comments. I will be sending through Carmen and the PWN a bibliography, a one-page bibliography, which does include this TED Talk by Dr. Lucy Hone. She's a resilience expert who did graduate from Martin Seligman's graduate program, the University of Pennsylvania. And she was in Christchurch, New Zealand when the earthquake hit. And she helped a lot of people deal with that situation following that terrible earthquake. And she's also had other trauma in her life. So this is one of the TED Talks on that short bibliography. And there's some other articles and resources. But I'm just coming back here to the questions and comments. We have about the last 5 or 10 minutes. And I put in here the photograph of the windswept palm trees, because that's the way I think many of us feel now, just swept by these coronavirus winds and not sure what's going to happen. But on the bottom is a photograph of Nice. I hope you're noticing this, Ella, to remember your hometown back over here with our beautiful turquoise sea. And when they planted the palm trees, and they're young and planted, they need to be braced. So these braces are supports that are helping them to grow straight and tall. And I think it's symbolic of our connection with each other, our connection with the Professional Women's Network, and the idea that we can brace and support each other and help. I'm not sure who wrote it, but Carmen said that one person wrote that one individual on the call was making masks and even surgical gowns and trying to do her bit to help the essential workers. And that's a fantastic example of supporting the whole system, because we're all in this together. So with that, I think we could even go to gallery showing. I'll stop sharing. We can go to gallery showing, Carmen, and see if there's some last comments in before signing off. So I'll go back here to gallery showing. Okay. Thank you to everyone. We have maybe 5 or 8 minutes here. Anybody would like to comment or make another support? Okay, yes, thank you, Valerie. Okay, for your comment there. You can also write it in the chat if you're a little bit not quite sure of speaking up. Don't worry about your English.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruth, for this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, thank you for joining.
And I'm Alberta.
Oh, I was going to say this is.
I just used the PC, Maria's PC.
Okay,
computer.
I was trying to make think who is Maria, because the face looked familiar. Thank you.
No.
Thank you, Maria. Alberta is joining from Rome. That's her family member's name. Okay, we have some people from Rome, from Torino, and Milano, I think. So thank you very much. Okay, anybody else? Okay, I think somebody wrote here in the chat box a few thank yous, and Laura said she's been following the course. This is Laura Gallard. Do you want to say, just unmute your mic, Laura. You can say this to everybody.
Hello, everybody from Milano. And there's a lockdown. It has been a very interesting opportunity for me to do plenty of new things. I have a daughter who is working every day 10 kilometers inside the house. As I have to speak with my granddaughter in Stockholm, I've been studying Swedish. I've been doing different webinars, including one on happiness on April 13 with a group of chief happiness officers. Okay. What else? Oh yes, I've been following this interesting group of work organized by Goldman on the power of resilience, which was quite interesting, an international group. What else?
Daniel Goleman is an expert on emotional intelligence, in case you weren't aware of that.
Yes. And what else? I've been doing diet and yoga and exercise every day, to keep
Okay,
fit.
well, it's, Laura, can you write in a link about the course with Daniel Goleman, and perhaps Carmen can add it to the bibliography?
Of course, yes, I have it here.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
I will
Okay.
find it in a moment. I will copy it in the
chat box, maybe, and we can pick it up.
Otherwise, I don't have the link to the. I will try anyway. I will
Yes.
do my best to copy now the link. And also, I have a husband who is a surgeon, so I've been learning so many things about sanitization, cleaning, and everything. Because when he comes back home every night, I have to do a special procedure to allow him in the house.
Wow.
That's it. Good luck to everybody. I will copy the link and send you, if I can, the Goleman course.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Laura. Okay, merci. And Laura formerly lived in Nice, so she has a strong connection here as well. Okay, would anybody else like to make a question or a comment? I see some of you, Cristina Gobate is kind of hiding there in the background.
I have a concern.
Alberta, yes.
I'm not expecting after the end of COVID-19 that everything will be the same as before.
I agree.
I am not expecting that.
I think we won't
I'm
return
not.
to the old normal. And Maria, the metaphor I like to use for that is the palm tree that gets some branches blown off in the wind. But as long as it can retain its palm heart, it will grow new branches. And I really think that all of us are going to be required to grow new branches.
I hope that this experience will help us to learn many different things, to change.
I hope so, because if not, it's wasted. And then that's
Right.
changes in everything from the health system to all kinds of different things, the way we interact with each other. I sincerely hope we can learn many lessons from this. Okay. Okay, so last few minutes, if we want to keep them, then we'd be on perfect time. But if you don't necessarily have to make a comment, I just wanted to open it up to allow participation. I've learned in the past 2 months that there's a difference between a webinar and a web session. So my idea today was to have a web session, and this is what I'm doing when I'm designing virtual programs with clients. In a webinar, you basically have a speaker. It's more of an academic style, the professor with the lectern, blah, 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 slides, etc. And a web session is deliberately intended to be interactive. So that's why I use some polls. That's why I have breakout rooms with other clients. I'm using annotation where you can kind of write on a whiteboard and different exercises, because I think that it's very important for people to be more engaged if they participate. So I hope you thought it was an interesting experience. I'm not sure, you might have already done web sessions before, but I think just like when I do training, it's extremely important to be interactive. It keeps people, thank you, Alberta, keeps people engaged, because otherwise I've attended some webinars, even by McKinsey last week, very intelligent people, but I was almost falling asleep. So boring. It's not just content. We have very intelligent people on this web session, so I like to give people the opportunity of participating and meeting other people, which is what PWN is all about as well. Lisa, you have a comment?
Yes, Ruth. I just wanted to thank you for putting together this web session, like you mentioned. And I thought the idea of the small groups was also very nice. So we got to talk a little bit more and, you know, not be so shy and talking to a very large group. Yeah. And I think it really does, even though it's online and we just see, you know, little squares with, you know, faces, I still think it does give the support that I think was intended, to know that all these people are there and everyone's going through more or less the same kind of things, right? No one's alone going through coronavirus, you know, the whole world really is going through coronavirus. So, but it's nice to see everyone's faces and talk a little bit about it.
And I agree that the breakout rooms are great, because some people that have a preference for introversion and maybe their English is not perfect, they're always going to be a little shy about speaking up in some big group. And you have more intimacy in the breakout rooms with a smaller group. You can see each other better. Another web session I did, everybody exchanged, they all connected with each other on LinkedIn. The people that had been in the breakout rooms together And I even got an email from one of them that she'd, you know, established some nice contacts with the other 2 people she'd been speaking with. So, and it gives you a chance to participate and bring your own contribution into the session. So I try to use it as much as possible, Lisa. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah, Ella Dyer is saying you can find me on LinkedIn, Ella Dyer. Okay. Okay, anybody else like to make a comment? I see.
Yes, I liked very much, Ruth Ann, your web session, like you said.
Thank you, Christina.
It was very interactive and I like it.
Okay, perfetto. Okay.
Grazie.
Perfect, as we say in Italian.
Yes.
Quite a few Italians in here. I have a long history of living in Italy, and that's one thing that's hard for me is we don't know yet when the border will open. Maybe June 15th, because I really miss my Italian friends and clients, and the border's 30 minutes away. It's a big temptation to sneak over. So, okay.
We hope, everybody of us hope that the burden will be open soon, but
yes,
we have to wait.
Yeah, many of us have friends and family that are in other countries, so that's at least we have the technology, as one person said earlier.
Yes, okay. At least.
Serena, were you waving, or you're just?
Yeah. Well, I was just like when you finish, no rush. No, I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the talk and the ability to be able to share what we feel and what we do about it. It happens to be, for me, it's a time at work. It's extremely busy, so I don't feel like this lockdown does not affect me at all. And I have a list of things I would love to do that is huge. So I just want to say, like, if you have time to do, if you really have time, like, take this silver lining and just do it. Don't waste the time procrastinating. And it's such a chance in a way to have this time to tackle new projects and start new initiatives. That it's really like, for the people who don't have the time, please do it. do your projects. Yeah, to all of you.
It's true. It's a fantastic opportunity to do all of those things you didn't have time to do. I've gone through a number of to-do lists and still have more. So I am enjoying it in that sense, so we just have to, it's the idea of taking that energy and not putting it into anxiety, putting it into converting it into developing the new opportunities. So I think many of us are doing that. So hopefully we'll go forward and keep connecting through the PWN.
Yep.
Any last comments? Because we're at exactly 1 hour. I know I worked in Italy a long time, but I try to be kind of Anglo-Saxon about managing time. So, people have dinner to prepare. Well, some of us, the ones that are us on Central European time, so that's not you, Ella. We have, maybe dinner to prepare for the family or something like that. But I don't want anybody to not have a chance to speak. Okay, bye, Christina. Okay, and have a good weekend, you too. Okay, I think, did you want to add any last thing, Amanda, or say goodbye on the behalf of PWN, or talk about the next webinar or web session?
Yes, I'd just like to thank everybody for attending and for participating. That's what makes these sessions great. And to remind everybody of 2 things. One, that we try to have one of these type of sessions nearly every week from the Nice Côte d'Azur branch of PWN. But PWN globally also has a lot of really interesting material. So if you go to the PWN site, you can look on the different events they have. So PWN Global have events, but also the other city networks are having events as well that PWN members can attend. And often, like ours, they're open to non-members as well. So just, if you want to see some more things, I encourage you to do that. And you can also look on social media on the hashtag PWN webinar. So again, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much, Amanda.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.